Sanbonani, Dumelang, Goeienaand, good evening, Salta, and welcome to episode 2 of Sustainable Spaces by Luxi, powered by Standard Bank. I am so excited to be your host again for another evening of riveting discussions, and I will not be alone, just like last time again. If you're joining us for the first time, Sustainable Spaces is an exciting space hosted live on what used to be known as Twitter Spaces, but is now, I guess, X Spaces, as well as that we're on LinkedIn. So if you're tuning in from Twitter, tuning in from LinkedIn, excited to have you today for what's going to be a conversation that will empower you and enlighten you with knowledge so that you can power and lighten up your home. I am not going to be alone, just like last time for this conversation. And to my left, I've got Louis Reinhardt. Louis, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. Thank you. We've got Hlengiwe Hadebe from Johannesburg. How are you, Hlengiwe?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Fantastic. And then once again, we've got the delightful head of Luxi, Mark Duplessis, joining us. Mark, how's it been?
Good, Tanashi. Great to see you and great to be here for round 2.
Great to have you as well. And I think last time around, if you weren't around for the very first episode of Sustainable Spaces, we opened up the floor and basically introduced South Africa to some of the possibilities that exist when it comes to overcoming the energy and, can I just say, the home challenges that we're facing right now. I don't need to tell you that things can be a little bit tricky, to say the least. And thankfully, we've got organizations like Luxi, we've got organizations like Standard Bank that are here to provide South Africans with everyday solutions in what are not everyday times at all. Just before we get into the actual conversation itself, for those who are tuning in for the first time or those who just need a recap, Mark, I'd like you to just take us through Luxi and just explain exactly how the business works. I know it's a home efficiency platform. You are here for South African families. Can you just tell us a little bit more about the products you have and the services that are available?
Thanks, Tanashi. Yes, so Luxi was really born out of the challenges that South African homes are facing. We know that running and managing a home is costly.
Yes.
And we're trying to find ways to intervene to really assist homeowners become more efficient, either through information, content, advice, also through investments, be they small or large, that they can make in their homes to be more efficient and to really look after their own and their families.
Yeah.
When it comes to electricity, of course, we've got solar solutions, we've got backup solutions, and of course, people forget how hungry a geyser is. So things like the smart geyser, to try and find ways to really reduce that consumption and help homeowners save money is our real core. We do water as well. We also do call-out services. So quite a lot of solutions for homeowners, but really trying to make it easy and simple to make these decisions and make educated decisions with trusted service providers.
That is incredible. And you're doing absolutely great work for South Africans everywhere, because I can guarantee there's probably someone who's listening to this right now who might be experiencing load shedding as we're speaking. I know all of us experienced it at least once today. So we do need to explore more solutions to see how we can keep the lights on, quote unquote. And I think last time that we were together for the first episode of Sustainable Spaces, to anybody who missed it, it was actually, it served as an introduction into solar for the home, exactly what you need to look at, how to monitor your usage. Is solar possibly the solution for you? And today we're looking forward to carrying on that conversation. We're going to be talking all kinds of property solutions. We're going to be talking maintaining your solar solutions. And then towards the end, we're going to open up the floor and look at even more alternatives that you could look at for your home. But there's also something in it for you. Everybody who asks a question and uses the hashtags "it can be" and hashtags SBLove with the blue heart stands a chance of winning an EcoFlow River 2. That is a power backup utility that's actually available for sale on Luxi's website, on Luxi's store, and it allows you to at least be able to charge, to keep your Wi-Fi on, charge your laptop, and power a couple of basic appliances during times that we're experiencing outages. So let's dive right into the conversation. I'm going to start with Louis. You are a property expert. I've seen your work on YouTube. Tell us a little bit more about your work just before we dive in.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. So I'm from Bloemfontein and I focus on investing in low to mid-income properties.
Yeah.
And I also invest in stocks and a bit of livestock. And then I have the YouTube channel on the side, hopefully to encourage and motivate young South Africans and to help them grow their financial literacy. So yeah, that's basically what I do on the side, and mainly focus on investing in property.
That's fantastic. And we're going to need that property knowledge today, because last time around, a lot of questions came in regarding some of the solutions people can explore, standalone houses, people living in complexes and apartments. And I guess that's the first question I kind of want to start the discussion on today. Sectional titles, people who live in complexes, people who live in basically shared spaces. We're talking solar, we're talking, adding some or implementing some of this technology to our homes. Can someone who's living in a complex like myself look at that as a potential solution?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's important to start off with knowing the difference between sectional title and freehold or full title properties.
Yeah.
So full title properties will be where you as the owner will be liable for repairs. And let's say, for example, you wanted to install a solar system, you
Yeah.
will be able to do so without getting permission from any community or anyone basically
Okay.
above you. So
That
with the
makes sense.
sectional titles, it's a bit of a lengthy process to do so, but it's definitely possible. And with body corporates and community schemes, you have to understand that you only own a certain part of the entire complex.
Okay.
So there's private property and
Yep.
then there's common property. So the private property will be like the inside of your house, let's say, for example, light fixtures, your furniture and appliances and so on.
Sure.
And then common property will be like your roof, for example. So that's where your PV panels will go. And there's a lot of rules and regulations regarding installations and changes on common property. So there's quite a few things that needs to be taken into consideration when wanting to install these type of systems. And I think by starting off, it's important to gain the right knowledge and maybe speak to someone
For sure.
in your body corporate. Maybe start with a portfolio manager or someone that's in charge that has the right knowledge that can guide you. But yeah, it's definitely possible. Excuse me. And I think with the common property, it's important to understand that there's obviously a lot of cost involved, and
Absolutely.
the body corporate tries to regulate the whole process, which can be great because they can make sure that the installations is done safely and done by a reputable company as well.
You know what? I think you've raised a lot of valuable points because as we're having this discussion, there's people tuned in from Twitter or X, there's people tuned in from LinkedIn, but a lot of young South Africans, and a lot of those are young professionals who are maybe looking into buying their first home, buying their first property, and we understand that for many people climbing the property ladder, those kinds of sectional title options are a great way to be able to start. But now you're looking at, okay, I'm facing these challenges. What can I introduce? What can I install in my home? So it's really interesting to know that, for example, like you said, you don't actually own the roof, even if you're living on the top floor.
Definitely,
and you've purchased that unit.
It's still common property. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Speaking of the young people who would be exploring these kinds of options, Hlengiwe, we're young people, we're young city people in Johannesburg. We understand the challenges that come with it. But at the same time, there's a lot of people who'll be watching who at least now are starting to gain the resources to be able to explore options like solar, because we know there has been a cost barrier in the past, right? So with that in mind and with your experience, firstly, please tell us a little bit more about your work and your previous background, especially in the energy sector and the work that you've done for the community. And then I just want to understand, there's one phrase that just keeps coming up, COC, Certificate of Compliance. You need that to get solar, apparently. I just want to understand a little bit more about how it works. So you can start with the intro and then just tell us a little bit more about how does one obtain a COC if they're really looking for solar?
Okay. Yeah. So currently, I'm working with civil society and youth to sort of give them capacity building around climate change policies that are currently happening in South Africa. Right now, a lot of discussion around just transition, so moving away from fossil fuels to more renewable sources. So trying to get young people and civil society to engage more into those spaces and also influence policy space in South Africa to be more ambitious to deal with the climate change issues. And then previously, I worked for an NGO that works with municipalities, so provides capacity to municipalities.
Wow.
And some of the key projects that I worked on was actually around solar and how municipalities can actually start to allow businesses and residential homes to put up solar PV legally in a way where so to ensure that they have the right paperwork. That once you are interested, what regulations do you need to follow and all of that. So providing the capacity.
I'm glad we have you today. We need this kind of knowledge.
Yeah. So that's sort of my background. Thank you.
So on those legalities that you need to make sure you've ticked all the boxes correctly before you can even install solar, how do you go about obtaining those compliance certificates?
It depends. Some of the I guess with municipalities as well, some are far ahead than others. So those who are far ahead is that you actually need to get permission. You need to speak to your municipality apparatus to get approval, and also to ensure that once you are putting up solar, is connected legally, right? Because because at the end of the day, that you are going to be generating electricity, and you don't want your electricity to be up and running, and then there's someone who's busy fixing, and particularly if your solar is connected to the grid, you don't want your solar to continue running, and then someone else is busy fixing the grid, and then that person gets shocked, right?
Yeah.
So you need to ensure that you comply with the city's rules that have been put
Sure.
up.
Sure.
So and then that includes whether your block. So when there's load shedding, it means your system goes down, or there's something that blocks your electricity from being back into the electricity. So you need to follow the rules that the city has put in place for you to be able to ensure that you are legally following, legally installing the system correctly. Yeah.
Okay, no, that's really great to know. I think it's important knowledge for everybody who's considering it. I think we just see solar panels on people's roofs, right?
Yeah.
We see the solar panels and we think it's just a simple case of going out and buying them and installing them. But there is a bit of a legal process there for, as you explained, legal reasons as well as safety reasons as well. So very, very good to note. And I think we did touch on it in episode 1. It did come up a couple of times during the conversation, just some of the legalities and how it might affect certain things like your taxes, etc. So I want to fast forward a little bit, Mark, and speak to maybe some people who, again, still considering solar, but have got a stronger understanding of some of these processes that Hlengi was talking about that we need to take. Once you have solar in your home and you're now looking at maintaining the panels, you're maintaining the life cycles of your batteries, perhaps if you've got inverters as well, you just want to keep everything running well, but maybe every now and then you need to troubleshoot. Maybe every now and then you might need repairs as well. The same way that as an installer, you need that certificate of compliance, how do we ensure that the repair people that are coming into our homes and coming to check out our equipment are also just as vetted and just as certified?
So we were talking about it before we started. It's going to be probably a really, really big industry and a really important one.
Yeah.
Because there has been a significant uptick in installations, and probably some of them potentially not to the levels and standards that are required. So homeowners are going to be looking and reaching out and trying to find some answers to how do I fix my system? It's not working.
Yeah.
So again, it's really, an electrician is not necessarily a solar specialist.
Okay.
And there are bodies, accreditation bodies that are available. And we would always encourage, if your system's down and you're trying to reach out, go to the SAPVIA website or go to the AREP website, Association of Renewable Energy Practitioners, and you will find reputable installers who have gone through that training. So I think from a maintenance perspective, don't try and do it yourself if you're not an electrician.
Okay.
Or even if you're a solar specialist, maybe, but rather get professionals. You're dealing with electricity here. You're not dealing with something that is trivial.
Okay.
So typically the power goes off, the distribution board might have tripped. Try and get it back up and running. If it doesn't get back up and running and your inverter is tripping, then call someone who really understands what's going on. Ideally, if your installer who put the system in should be the people that should come and do that work for you.
Okay.
A lot of the installers and the partners we work with provide service warranties, so that if there's something down, they will come and fix it under the warranty periods. So that's really important. But if your system is out of warranty, it doesn't mean that you can't get that sorted out and get it fixed by a reputable solar professional.
Totally understand. And I remember, Mark, the last time that we spoke in the very first episode, you did mention as well that, let's say someone reaches out to me on social media, right? And I think, okay, I don't know whether or not this person's legit. There is a way to check there is a way to ensure that your repair personnel are verified. There is a certificate that they also need to be able to produce, and you can check it for yourself, right?
Absolutely. And don't be scared to ask for it.
Okay.
To say, as the homeowner, please can you... It's not that you don't trust the person, but you just want to make sure that you're dealing with someone who really has done the certifications and does know exactly what they're doing. And certainly to ask for any referrals or any work that they've done before is also another good way to do it. There's a lot of new businesses, and we encourage that, new businesses coming into the solar business and into the solar space.
For sure.
But everyone needs to pay their dues and make sure that they are well trained, and that their teams are well trained and know exactly what they're doing.
I completely understand. Like Hlengi was saying, the safety elements alone are just a big example of some of the things that could go wrong. So it's absolutely crucial you have the right people working on your parts once you do have these kinds of resources in your home. For those who've just joined us a little bit late, welcome again to episode 2 of Sustainable Spaces. This is a talk that is powered by Luxi, a Standard Bank organization, and essentially we want to give you the knowledge to be able to explore alternative energy sources perhaps in your home to overcome some of these challenges. And one way we're going to help you do that is potentially by winning an EcoFlow River 2. It's a portable backup utility. It's quite big. I saw it in real life for the first time. It's quite big. You can plug in a number of appliances. You can make sure that at the very least a few things are running even when the lights are out. So if you want to stand a chance of winning that, please keep coming with your responses. So on Twitter, you can just reply to the Sustainable Spaces link with your questions using the hashtags #ItCanBe and SBLove with the blue heart. And on LinkedIn, you can just reply in the comments with your question using the exact same hashtags. We'll be answering a lot of your questions throughout the night as well. So do send in your questions so that you can also get the knowledge you're looking for. And then we'll be randomly picking the winner from everybody who's asked the questions and use the hashtags correctly. So keep them coming. Speaking of questions, my next one's for you, Louis. And I want to talk a little bit, as a property investor, right? You obviously have a lot of metrics and criteria for assessing the value of a home, and maybe you even go beyond that and offer advice to tenants and homeowners. So if I was looking at installing some of these solutions in my home, how does that affect the value of my property if I'm looking to, eventually bank on that one day?
Sorry, it depends on the type of property that you're looking for. Let's say, for example, a family or young professionals that's looking to move into a certain area. If they want to buy a property and they see that it has access to solar installations, that's obviously a big plus and a massive advantage, especially in the times that we're living in now. So, resale value, it all depends on the equipment that's used and whether it's done by a reputable company and do you have the relevant COCs and all of those type of things. But it definitely increases the value of your property in the sense of it will attract more buyers and it will attract a certain type of buyer that wants to have access to that solar system.
Yeah, and I'm seeing that a lot. I mean, we're talking about sectional titles right at the beginning. I am seeing a lot of new complexes coming up saying we are load shedding proof. We're prepared for load shedding. Some of them are saying they've got generators on site. Some of them are saying they've got other alternative sources as well. Does that increase the price for me, a potential buyer as well? Like we said, there's a lot of young people looking at their first properties. Does that increase the price that we'd be looking at for taking on a bond for that kind of property?
Yeah, so definitely. I think with new developments specifically, they can ask a premium price to a property that doesn't have access to solar energy. Because it's a massive advantage for those home buyers. And I think if I wanted to live in a property that has access to that, I will be able or willing to pay extra just to get access to that.
Okay, fair enough. And I'm going to pass it on to Hlengiwe, but it's still in the same vein. How far away do you think we are from having South Africans who are living perhaps in peri-urban or even rural areas being able to explore these kinds of options? So I've lived in various townships throughout my life, and I'd like to think that, yes, I've seen homes of different kinds and different materials, but are those homes or are many of those homes prepared to be able to take on, let's say, a solution like solar?
I think at the moment solar is quite expensive, right? So as an individual household, whether a peri-urban area or rural area, even in urban areas, is still quite a substantial investment, especially the upfront capital that is required.
Okay.
But there are there are different ways that we could access solar. So it could be that the rich areas, if I may call them high income areas and businesses as well, they put up solar and then they sell it to the grid. So that's how then the peri-urban and rural areas start to access clean energy, right, through other selling it to the grid. But also instead of like huge solar PV systems, it could be smaller solar home systems that one could look at that only power possibly lights. And there are some solutions that also sometimes actually for people who haven't been electrified, for townships that aren't electrified, solar home systems and mini grids are a possible option where you could put it up and it supplies with your small basics, as you say, charging your cell phone, charging your laptop, and you could even go a bit bigger and charging your refrigerator as well. So there are those options that one could possibly look at for low-income households. Yeah.
That's a great point that you bring up, because I have noticed that I think maybe even over the course of the last 10 years, but certainly the last 3, more and more headlines, more and more stories in the press and in the papers just talking about, certain areas and parts of the country, certain township areas especially, are looking at rolling tests or having just a little bit of minimal investment to see exactly how it could operate. But it doesn't sound like it's starting with the homes just yet.
Yeah, so I know there's in Mpumalanga, there is where some people have taken a community hall and put up solar. So when there's load shedding, people in the community come and charge there. So those are some of the options that communities could start to look at, where they do community using stock fair kind of situation, and they investing to putting it up in a clinic or a school, and then during load shedding, people could go and charge their systems at that local place as well. Yeah, so those are some of the options that people are currently sort of exploring at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All of those, as well as another one that I read about. Mark, maybe you can weigh in here. We've, or at least I read about, again, in the township where we're seeing not only homes but let's say businesses or like very small and informal businesses taking on portable solar packages, portable solar panels and batteries that they can use to operate, let's say, a small local hair salon or small other local businesses in their areas as well. Is that something that you can potentially see appealing to the kind of economy that we have in South Africa, where we need low, maybe not high cost, but low cost, smaller solutions for, for the kinds of informal businesses that people run for themselves, by themselves?
Absolutely. Typically what you see with a lot of these products like the EcoFlow and others, they do sell them with foldable solar panels.
Oh,
so
nice.
they're chargeable. Okay. They are chargeable as backup, portable backup. So those come at a lower cost. Of course, you got to make sure you look after your unit and don't overload it. I can't speak for whether you can be running hair dryers or lots of hair dryers off the units, but the point is really valid. It's very costly to do a full installation in a home, wired into the distribution board, panels on the roofs. It's very costly, and I think that's where the work needs to be done. And a lot of that work around economies of scale, communities coming together, stockpiles, crowdfunding, those opportunities to try and really democratize renewable energy and solar energy into areas that maybe you won't do it for a single home, but in a community coming together and finding ways to make that work. Super important. These small businesses, they really need to keep going and running during the day, and it's quite devastating to see, and you drive around and you see a lot of these businesses 100%. Sitting waiting for the next round of load shedding to stop so that they can carry on cutting hair or doing whatever the business is that they're running. So really, really important.
And I think that's one thing that we all appreciate about Luxi, putting the power back in the hands of South Africans, literally and figuratively. It's empowering. It's giving them autonomy again to be able, like you said, to continue your business on your terms with the right tools. So I'm glad to see that there are possibilities, and I look forward to seeing exactly where that can go. We're talking across South Africa, which is an extremely diverse nation. So we can be talking about solutions like you were describing, Louis, that can exist in standalone homes. But at the same time, we also understand that not everybody's living in those kinds of circumstances. So we need to look at solutions across the financial board, across different target groups and different demographics as well. Sorry about that. Louis, one thing that came up from episode 1 was some of the infrastructural challenges that actually affect your energy usage in the home, right? So we had Fezile, who spoke extremely well about something as simple as a door, something as simple as your curtains, making your home colder, therefore and more heaters to stay warm as well. What are some of the other pieces of advice that you'd give people to look at in their homes before they consider whatever their ultimate solution will be?
I think you need to understand your energy usage.
Okay.
That's really important, especially when thinking of getting a solar system installed. You need to understand what it is that you want and what you need. I think like a basic thing to do is to make sure that you use energy efficient appliances to save power as much as you can, besides like the installation of solar energy.
Yeah.
And then you obviously need to be able to understand the different solar installations. Do you want to use a grid tie? Do you want to do a hybrid system? Or do you completely want to go off grid? And that's all things that you need to take in consideration before you kind of just jump into it.
Okay, that makes sense. Hlege, did you want to add?
No, definitely agreeing with him is that one thing, before you even start to put in alternatives, right, you need to ensure that you are electricity efficient in your home. You need to ensure that your refrigerators are energy efficient, your lights are energy efficient.
Yes.
So to cut down the amount of energy you're consuming before anything else. That also helps with the amount of solar PV you are going to put up in your home, right? Because if you are consuming too much, then it means you need a bigger system. Which therefore costs more. So if you are more energy efficient, therefore it means you don't need a huge system to put up in your home. So definitely be energy efficient before you can even start to consider anything else. Yeah.
I like that approach. I think that's a very sustainable way of looking at it. And in fact, that leads me to the first question coming in from Twitter. This user wants to know, what's the average lifespan of solar panels? But maybe let's broaden it. Let's look at all the equipment involved. So the panels, the batteries themselves. What's the average life cycle of the equipment you'd need to install, and how soon would you need to look at replacing it? This user asks, is it a long-term or a short-term investment?
I think so. Generally, it comes up 20 years going up is the average lifespan of solar panels.
Okay.
But that also is very dependent on the maintenance, right? You have to ensure that you are maintaining it frequently, and especially with solar panels during non-running seasons, you need to ensure that you're cleaning it, taking off the dust as much as possible, because that also affects the energy output from it. Yeah, so if there's dust, then it literally reduces the amount of electricity that is produced. If like there's a branch cover or a shade or something,
yes.
it also reduces the amount of output that of electricity that is produced. So you have to maintain it frequently, ensure that you are cleaning it as often as possible. Similarly to batteries, but I think I'll leave it to him because he has more experience with batteries on how you keep up with the maintenance of batteries. But you definitely, to ensure 20 years of lifespan and more, you have to keep up with the maintenance.
The maintenance, I understand.
Thanks, Ligiwe. So the batteries, when we talk to the customers that are installing solar systems and certainly our partners, protecting the battery and not overloading it is really important.
Okay.
So when they set up the batteries, they make sure that they don't discharge to, say, lower than 15% or so. And what that does is protects the battery from being totally discharged and some of the cells becoming compromised.
Yeah.
Which then can shorten the lifespan of the batteries. The issue with batteries is that they are built on cycles. So warranties that come with batteries are essentially worked out based on the estimated number of cycles you would be using the batteries over, say, a 1-year period. So if you have a 5-year warranty on your batteries, it's worked out to say, well, how many cycles on average will this battery probably be running through? The problem is, in this market and in South Africa, when you're discharging your batteries on stage 6 load shedding a lot, you're running cycles through your batteries.
100%.
So it really is around when load shedding hits, it's not a free-for-all. It's not, let's just leave everything on. It's always about energy efficiency. It's always about saying, what do we need on? We're in load shedding, but we're very grateful that we've got power, we've got internet. Okay, guys, the family, TV, the fridges are running, and the internet, and let's go and walk around the house and make sure that all the other lights are off. So we are protecting the battery, which is a big investment,
100%,
and B, not being wasteful to discharge this battery, through the load shedding period.
Okay, that's really, really, both of you actually really, really great to consider, because a lot of people just assume that, we install and then that's that. But I think the maintenance is extremely important. I want to just know quickly before we move on about the cleaning. Like, how do you clean your solar panels? What's the correct way? It's not sunlight and sponge, right? Like, what's the correct way to make sure that you're preserving your materials and getting them, keeping them running efficiently?
So they, with a lot of the information that comes through is really around, not a high solvent or a detergent that can really damage the pane or the glass. So light soaps, sponges.
Okay.
You know those, I think they're called squeegees. That you
Oh
clean
yes, I know
windows
them.
with?
Yeah, the squeegees. Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, and really it's just around the output that the panel can produce. Dirty panels will produce less. But it's not only that, it's also making sure that on at least maybe a 6 monthly or every 6 to 12 months that you're getting maintenance done, checking the connections, checking that they're tight, that there's nothing loosening.
Makes sense.
And that's really again, it's a big investment, so you really want to look after it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And we don't encourage jumping on your roof and cleaning the panels, but safely finding ways to clean those panels through, those kind of squeegee type devices or cleaning systems.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So I want to broaden the conversation on a national level, talking about the country, because one thing that comes up, and it came up in last time's discussion, is the fact that a lot of the big metros have the most accessibility to the widest range of solutions, right? So if you're in Joburg, if you're in Cape Town, if you're in Durban, we've got companies like Luxi, we've got companies that are offering their services. What is the landscape like in Bloemfontein? What is the landscape like, Louis, I know Bloemfontein is also a metro, it's a very big city, but it's a very different city to Johannesburg as well. So when it comes to these kinds of solutions, when you're driving around, what's the presence like when it comes to seeing solar panels? How accessible do people feel these kinds of solutions are for them in the city?
So I think in Bloemfontein specifically, majority of the solar that I see is bigger businesses.
Okay.
It's starting to pop up more and more on like free title properties and let's say, for example, a couple of years ago, it's quite rare to see solar panels on someone's roof. Now it's much more accessible and there's options available, and it's definitely popping up in a lot of different places. But what I've seen is that majority of the people that has disposable income to afford these solar systems is probably big businesses or even smaller businesses, and then maybe free title properties. It's quite scarce to see like lower to mid income body of sectional titles or complexes or flats with solar, but what I've seen is mainly like households, people that live there like a family, and then of course businesses as well.
Okay, great. And I'd love to hear from you guys, the audience as well. I'd love to know, firstly, where are you tuning in from? I always love to see where everybody's listening from. I think last time we had, so many different South African cities. But I'd love to know, where are you tuning in from and what's the landscape like on that side? Are you also seeing the billboards that are advertising solar services, or is this something you've simply never come across and are wondering when exactly it's going to make it to your area? And of course, don't forget to keep the questions coming. We've got the power panel here ready to answer and share the expertise, share the knowledge with you. And of course, you still have that chance to win the EcoFlow River 2, that powerful portable backup utility that'll make sure that you can keep a couple of your appliances on as well. So Hlengiwe, we talked about the opportunities of this industry, right? And Mark touched on it. It's an exciting industry. It's grown tremendously in the last couple of years. We're seeing businesses like Luxi now. We're seeing a lot of businesses and opportunities coming in. I've also read about the fact that leaders are actually looking into training young South Africans. I believe up to 6,000 South Africans could be trained on correctly installing solar panels by the end of this year as well, which is an exciting thing, not just for this conversation that we're having, but we also know about the employment challenges in the country. Can you tell us a little bit more about your thoughts on that, and also maybe potentially other potential careers and opportunities that can open up if we continue to invest in more clean energy?
All right. So definitely, when we were talking before we started about the maintenance and the booming business, because as I said earlier, I'm in the space where I engage with young people. So one of the biggest questions at the moment as well is like skills, right, and job opportunities, especially with the transitions that we're making in South Africa. Is that there's some people are getting skills in the wrong places, in the wrong sectors, right? It's sectors that are potentially going to be redundant, not going to be existing in the next 5 to 10 years. So like the renewable energy space is one space where we are seeing that there's a lot of potential.
Yeah.
So installing solar is one of them, but also actually manufacturing as well. Manufacturing the solar panels as well is one of the opportunities that we're seeing. What we're also seeing is around electric vehicles as well. There's starting to be a boom in South Africa around that. So we're seeing a skills transfer from our current motor vehicles, people fix those cars, to people be able to fix electric vehicles and able to make manufacture those as well. So I think those are some of the spaces that we're looking at, but also around energy efficiency, right? When you talk about being energy efficient, spaces around making your buildings more energy efficient. We need more people who will be able to what is EPCs, electric.
The engineering, procurement, construction businesses.
The certificates that ensure that your building is
age certification.
Yes. Okay. So we will need more people that will be able to be able to do that. So these are some of the spaces that young people can start to get into to ensure that they are getting and they're in the right direction in terms of where the economy is going in South Africa. So there's definitely lots of opportunities for young people at the moment. Yeah.
And I mean, look, Louis, you also spoke to the same thing, that these kinds of solutions can affect the value of your property as well. So do you think in your industry, or not you specifically, but maybe the real estate professionals, the salespeople who are actually on the ground, whose job it is to get families into the right homes, do you think it changes their approach as well? Do they now need to make sure that they look, or if families are saying, no, I need to make sure the lights are on, does that change or complicate the lives of people who are selling property, who are trying to put families in homes?
I think the agents that's trying to sell the properties, definitely it makes it easier if you have a property that has solar, because depending on your situation and depending on what type of property you're looking for, it will let's say for example I have a family and I'm looking for a specific property, I would probably phone the agent and make sure does it actually have access to solar electricity. And if it doesn't, it might be that I'm not interested in that specific property. So it's obviously for the agent, they might lose commission. And then the other side of it, if you get a family and you have a property available that has access to it, you'll be able to make the sale much easier. So it's definitely an advantage, and I feel that's a good selling point for properties. If I wanted to look for a property with solar and I have an agent that has one available, it will definitely make me or I'll be willing to kind of look at the property in more detail and to make sure if this is actually suitable for me and my family.
That makes a lot of sense, and I'm glad you mentioned the word suitable, and again, just talking about assessing your needs, assessing your property, because I guess there might be a lot of people who won't be able to get the full package, quote unquote, from the very beginning. And we touched on this in the first episode, Mark, but there's a phrase that I loved that was introduced, and they described it as a hybrid solar solution. Basically, where you've got your solar panels, you've got your batteries, but you can possibly even have an inverter as well. What are some of the ways that you can plug and play different parts? Just to give our listeners and viewers a couple of examples of how, okay, you can adjust your offering and you can adjust your offering based on your requirements.
So there's two categories essentially. It's the installed backup solution with solar panels, which is wired into the DB box in the house. And then there's the portables. So portable battery where you're plugging stuff into the battery pack itself. That's all built in with the inverter capability to run a normal appliance or a toaster or whatever it may be.
Okay.
In the installed backup space, where PV panels can be connected directly to that inverter and the battery system, that is modular. And a lot of those you can build on. So you can say, start with an inverter, maybe a 5 kilowatt or an 8 kilowatt inverter, and maybe one battery and 5 solar panels, because that's maybe what your budget allows for that particular year. A lot of the systems allow for you to then add a second battery, add another 5 panels over time. So you can really build on your system over time. And that gives you the opportunity to not only get in the game, but also deal with load shedding.
Okay.
So solve for that first challenge.
Yeah.
And then secondly, start to work out, okay, how do I change my behavior? How do I stop the dishwasher from being run or the washing machine at nighttime? Let me rather run it during the day while the panels are producing free power.
Okay.
And I can run my appliance for free in the middle of the day. So that behavioral change starts to happen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then you start to realize, maybe if I added another 5 panels, I could actually do more during the day and do a lot of that, say, housework, which maybe takes up a lot of energy in that period of, say, 11 a.m. till 3 p.m. So that I'm using free power. I'm using power from the sun. My batteries are full, so if I do get hit by load shedding, I'm still okay. And it's really a journey, and it's an exciting one, because again, a lot of these inverters allow for you to start to really see what's going on in the home.
Yes.
The ability to actually have visibility of where the consumption is. And I have it in my family, and my behavioral change is quite fun, sometimes a little bit frustrating to say, please, what's on? I can't, what are we using right now? And, it's that kind of behavioral change that allows you to really think about what you're doing.
And on that very note, a question's just come in. So this user is basically giving an example, right? And they're saying that they once plugged in their batteries connected to solar to their UPS as well, and it drained their solar batteries. Now they switched to solar again during load shedding, but this time without connecting the UPS, and the batteries lasted that entire 2-hour period. So they're wondering, could a faulty UPS affect the effectiveness of your batteries as well?
Sure, it's getting super technical. I'll have a go at an answer, but it might not be the best answer. But essentially, it's really just looking at what's on and what's consuming power at that particular point in time. They call them power vampires, I think. A lot of appliances are drawing power even though they're on standby. And that's also, when batteries and inverters or batteries are getting drained, it's often those type of challenges. But I wouldn't want to lean in too much more. That one too technical.
I understand. Thank you for that. And I think we can always follow up with additional knowledge in future episodes, as well as on the timeline as well. So guys, do keep your questions coming. I think I'm going to ask 1 or 2 more, and then I'll open it up to the floor from the questions that have been coming on social media, because a lot of people are curious about just how exactly they can incorporate this knowledge into their lives. But I guess the last question from me is, we've talked a lot about solar in the first 2 episodes. Outside of utilities that need the sun, what are some other solutions that South Africans can bring into their homes on a realistic level? This one's open to the floor. Anyone can take it.
I've been really researching this a lot because it's something that fascinates me. And if you look at the renewable energy category, there's not a lot accessible to a residential home. There are these mini wind power stations that I think in some areas in Texas, some homes use. I haven't seen it in this market.
Never seen
it. Maybe
in
Sterkfontein Dam there, where the wind pumps might be something to use. But what we're trying to focus on within our space is demand and supply. So demand management is going to make a big difference. So as an example, there are about 6 million geysers, electric geysers in South Africa. If about 130,000 of those geysers, of the 6 million, which is not a lot, if those geysers were not heating water in the morning and in the evening, just take them out of the peak, that would eliminate an entire stage of load shedding.
What?
And it's that demand management work, and that's the energy efficiency conversation that comes in, because the idea that this understanding of trying to do the best you can within your space and within your home not only saves you money, but also can make a big collective difference. So I haven't answered your question directly, because solar is really probably the only real renewable energy answer for a residential home. Of course, there's other renewable energy solutions in the big commercial C&I world. There's hydroelectric, there's biomass, there's wind, and those are really great solutions that will be mixed up and are being deployed in the country as we speak. But as a resident, focus on efficiency first, and then work out how do you produce some energy that you can deal with your challenges in the home.
I totally understand that. And you know what? I don't have solar in my home, but I do have one of those portable backup utilities, and can I say they are an absolute lifesaver. During 4 hours of load shedding, at least I can still be able to plug in my Wi-Fi, catch up on some series, and the time whiles away. So if at least you'd like to add that to your home, please, we've got a couple of more questions. Send through your questions using the hashtags #ItCanBe and SB Love. In fact, I do have a lot of questions coming through. So the first one's for you, Louis, actually. They've tagged you and said, really enjoying your work. I'm guessing this person's also seen your YouTube channel, and they want to know, if they're a renter, if they're renting a property, can they look at solar, or is it up to the landlord, or is it a conversation you can have? How would you even begin to approach that solution?
Yeah, I think it starts with gaining the right knowledge again. Obviously, if you'll have to speak to your landlord first. Your landlord will obviously have to speak to the trustees of the body corporate. So again, that's quite a tedious process, but they will definitely allow you to install solar as long as the right steps are followed. Again, they want to protect the common property of that complex. So as long as you have a reputable company that can do the installation, you can get a COC, and you do not damage your property, and all of the right steps were taken, they should be able to allow you to do the installation in your complex.
Okay, I'm going to speak to my landlord right after this. Just want to see what he might think about that. But no, that's good to know that. Could you have possibly the same conversation, let's say if you're renting a freestanding home as well from a previous landlord?
Yeah, well, again, it depends on how you actually try to do it. If you do installation in a freehold property, the discussion needs to be made, like who owns the solar installation, who owns the panels. And as long as you have good communication with your landlord, I'm sure that he'll be able or she will be able to allow this installation. I think it's all about, like, you don't want to damage your roof, you don't want to struggle with roof leakages or any issues like that.
Absolutely.
So I think that communication is key when it comes to renting specifically. Even if you're the owner of the property, it's important to speak to the right people and follow the right steps. I think that's the main thing that you need to focus on, instead of kind of just going with it and doing the whole setup and potentially installing an unsafe system or causing issues or damage to the property.
Yeah, I think tenants definitely would appreciate that advice, and I think also just anybody who is renting out their own property would also appreciate if their tenants approach them first and you have that communication, you make those checks correctly.
Definitely.
That's really good to know. Thank you for that question.
If I can add to that,
Please,
I think
please.
what's really an interesting one, and Louis in the property investment space would know this, is a landlord who has solar on their home. In trying to rent it out, it's going to get rented faster than one without.
Wow.
So that's obviously an investment that the landlord may choose to want to make.
Exactly.
And I think if the renters listening to the series is encourage the landlord to look at that investment for the future of renting that home, because if you're in the home for maybe a 2-year rental agreement, the next tenant coming in is going to be asking those questions.
Exactly.
I'll sign this 2-year agreement if you put solar in. So it really helps the landlords market their property probably a little bit easier.
I like
as well.
that.
No, it's a selling point for a tenant to see that there's solar available.
100%. No, it makes a lot of sense, and I think a lot of people will definitely appreciate that advice. The next question, I think I'm going to direct this one at Hlengi, where Retumetse asks, in simple terms, like explain it to us like we're 5 years old now. What's the difference between grid-tied and off-grid solar?
Okay. I've been hoping that I'll be able to so I'm gonna just start also to say that, so because you have solar, it doesn't mean that you're protected from load shedding.
Okay.
Let's start there. So that when you're looking at solar, you're looking at whether you want to save electricity, or you want to save money, or you wanting to save load shedding. So you could put up a solar PV where it helps reduce your electricity costs, and that is to be grid tied in, and you are able to sometimes either you don't feed back to the electricity, so you consume everything that you have, and whatever is left over is not consumed, is wasted.
Okay.
Or you are grid tied and you're able to feed back into the national grid.
Okay.
And so that means that you can consume what you can consume, and if there's any surplus, then you can feed it back to the grid. And in some cities, the city actually pays you for feeding back into the grid. So that's one of the great options. But if you and that option does not protect you from load shedding. That option means when there's load shedding, the inverter stops you from actually producing, because of the fact that you might shock someone who's working on the grid, on the national grid or something like that, right? However, if wanting to protection from the grid, then you need to then have what you was talking about, batteries as well, so that way you use, and then the excess you're storing it on the battery, and then during load shedding, then you can then access the storage from the battery. So that's the grid tied options that you have, and of course those are you have to go through the city's regulations and all of those things to ensure that you are installed correctly. Even with the off-grid system, you actually have to go through via the municipality or ESCOM as well before you actually put it up. Off-grid means you have to have solar and battery because you will have to store, because the grid connected means that you are relying on the national grid to give you energy when you don't have enough stored, or during when you don't have enough or during a rainy day, for example, you can rely on the grid. Off-grid means you're on your own, right? You're not tapping into the grid. You have put up enough solar power to supply with your energy needs, and you have enough battery to say when the sun is not shining, relying on your battery. So those are the two differences. That's the two differences. And then lastly, on the alternatives, I think the other alternatives is to also look into gas cooking, right? Because as a household, you can just decide for the midterm term, you can actually start to say, okay, let's switch to gas cooking. That way, we don't have to rely on electricity, and you can continue cooking even during load shedding, and you can have the smaller appliances like a solar lights to help you out, and your UPSs to help with your batteries and your Wi-Fi, but have gas for cooking. Yeah.
I like that suggestion, and I think that could be accessible to a lot of people as well. Just at least, like you said, just to take care of the cooking. I remember when my baby was small, during load shedding, we didn't know how else to boil water. At least gas is a solution for some of those challenges as well. I appreciate that. And then the last question coming in from the viewers. Okay, not the last question. There's still loads of questions, but the last question for this conversation, I guess it rounds everything up, and that's why I wanted to end with it. I almost already know the answer, but again, opening to the floor. One user wants to know, is solar a good investment overall with everything we've just learned and discussed today?
I'll have a go at it. So essentially, the capital cost is large. Yeah. But there are ways to pay it on a monthly basis. So home loans within the standard bank environment, we offer home loan readvances as well as the future use allowance in the home loan. And we also offer a variety of other loans
including solar loans themselves. Hey?
Yeah, so solar loans. And what happens then is you can work out your return on investment over a period of time. And once you've paid off your system, you get free power. So for every kilowatt that you produce after you've paid off your system, you're saving. And we've done a lot of calculations around looking at the payback periods and over a period of time that your investment will come back to you. It really is that. And then secondly, Louis also mentioned, we've also seen some data out of the bond originators. There is an uptick. There is an uptick on the value of your property. Great. It might not be directly correlated to the exact amount of money you spent on your solar system.
Okay, sure.
But certainly there's been information that we've seen that allows us to believe that there's definitely an uptick. And then thirdly, the sellability. So it's not always necessarily that your home, if you have a home for R1 million and someone offers you 800,000 and you say, well, I've got a solar system, so my number is R1 million. Yeah. It gives you more of a front foot as a seller to hold your line on your price. And I think those are the factors that, to answer your question, is yes, I do think that it's a good investment for the home. Even it should not only be about load shedding. It should really be about renewable energy, as well as the opportunities that are on the horizon, which are in some areas already available, to sell your excess power back into the grid. And then secondly, a discussion for another time and maybe another episode is carbon credits. And that there is value in carbon credit offset that could become a reality. I'm not saying it is right now, but at a residential level, it could become a reality where you can actually be producing value in the carbon markets from producing renewable energy off your roof. So lots of reasons why it's a good consideration.
Amazing. Do you guys want to add to that one as well?
Yeah. One, I think in the space that I work in, of course, it's a good investment because from how we're currently producing electricity, very dirty, produces high emissions, contributing to climate change. So moving to renewable energy is a good investment because it's low carbon. It reduces our emissions, so it's responsible. Ensures that we live a future for our children, right?
Yeah.
Two, I think what I also wanted to say is that although there are challenges with complexes investing in solar, is that there are ways that there are new ways that are coming up where you actually don't have to own the solar PV, right? So a company could come in, you go to a company and they take the risk of putting up the solar and they are responsible for maintaining. So it's like you renting a house, right? You're not responsible really for the painting and the maintenance of the house. All you have to do is just pay for a monthly rent. So similarly to solar PV, that's an offering that is currently happening at the moment, is where a company could takes up the risk of putting up the capital and putting the solar PV and maintaining it for 20 years. And as a complex, you have a 20-year contract with that company, where you then pay a tariff every month, and it increases annually, but it's much cheaper than what you are getting from the national grid as well. And as a complex, then you can decide, oh, well, we actually like this, we want to own it. Then after 5 years, you might actually get into an agreement where you take ownership and you are responsible for all of it. But I think I personally, because I enjoy things like washing machines where I'm not responsible for things, right? It takes away the time. It's nice to have someone who's reliable for the maintenance and the cost, and all you are paying a monthly fee. So there are options that are currently that are on offer right now, and they're growing. So definitely a lot of options for people, and yes, definitely it's a good investment.
Definitely a good investment. I love that. That's a wonderful note to end tonight on. Guys, I wish we could have talked for the whole night, but we do have to wrap it up here. Just want to say first and foremost, thank you to the audiences who have tuned in. Thank you for sending your questions. Keep sending your questions through, because there is another episode of Sustainable Spaces coming to your timeline very, very soon. But for now, you know what? I always say, give a family a light and you can power a home for a day. But enlighten them with knowledge and you can empower them for a lifetime. So thank you to our power panel for empowering us with all of this knowledge, and we're going to continue this in future episodes of Sustainable Spaces. Before we wrap up, where can we follow you? Where can we keep up with all of your amazing content, all of your knowledge, and where can we continue to learn from you? I'll start with you, Louis, again.
No, so I'm on YouTube and on Instagram under the handle of Louis Reinhardt. So mainly YouTube would be the best place to kind of find me, where I share a lot of knowledge.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think for me, LinkedIn is in terms of the work that I do. LinkedIn is the best place to find me. So on LinkedIn, and I look like this on LinkedIn. So
really? So we won't miss it. It's fine. We won't miss it. Love it. And Mark, where can we find you? And as well, follow Luxi and learn more about Luxi.
So Luxi is at luxi.co.za.
Great.
We also have a great knowledge hub there. Lots of really great insights, advice, tips. And myself, I'm on LinkedIn. Also Mark Duplessis.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Sat-a, it's been great spending an evening with you. Let's do it again sometime soon. Until then, take care.